joining us here at our first interactive workshop. Today's meeting is brought to you by SSW, the Waimakariri District Council and the Department of Internal Affairs. Thank you very much to Nikki at SSW for facilitating this, to Trish from Department of Internal Affairs for presenting, and to Wendy from the District Council for organising all of this for us today. Also, a big thank you to Sam. Sam is in the back. He's our technical guru, and without Sam, this is absolutely impossible. I'm just going to hand over to Nikki quickly to do a karakia for us. Please, Nikki.
Kia tau te rangamare e roto e tēnei mahe o tatou e tēnei wā. That peace be in this work and with us for this time together. Kia ora.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Okay, today's workshop, as I was saying, is going to be an interactive workshop. I'm going to hand over to Trish once I have done all the housekeeping rules, and then Trish will give you an overview of how we're going to run this workshop. First, what can you expect from today's meeting? This is going to take about 90 minutes. As I said, Trish will give you an overview. It will take about 10 minutes to give you the overview. Once Trish has done the overview, you will understand what is expected of you. When Trish is ready, she will ask Sam to put you into a breakout room. You don't have to do anything. You're going to go into a breakout room, and Trish will explain to you what the expectation is of you while you're in your breakout room. After we've returned from our breakout rooms, we will have a discussion about the discussion that you had in your breakout room, which will take about 50 minutes. At the end of the workshop, I'm going to ask you to participate in a poll again. The poll will only be 3 questions, so please just stay at the end of the session and participate for us in that poll, because that is a good reflection on how we had done today. Just your housekeeping rules for today: always stay muted. If you have any questions, please do so in chat. You will have received a list of 10 questions from Wendy. If you don't have the questions with you, just go to chat and look for Wendy Howe. Put in your email address and Wendy will send you the questions. If you accidentally go out of Zoom, don't worry, just go back in the way that you just came in. And because now we are open, and sometimes when you click on one of the documents, or you ask a question or something, you may accidentally push the wrong button. Out you go, just come straight back in through the Zoom link that you have. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, just do this quick exercise with me. If you move your mouse, you will see at the bottom of your screen is all sorts of icons that pops up. Just in those icons, there's the chat. That's how you ask questions. You'll see next to the chat is the poll. When we do the poll, that's the icon you click on, and there will be questions that you answer. It's a rating question. So just do that for us. Okay, I think that's enough from me for one day. I'm gonna hand you over to Trish now to walk you through the overview of the workshop. Trish.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces and nice to see some new faces. So one day I hope we'll meet in person. Hey, so what are we going to do today is we're going to look at writing a funding application, and it's about telling your story using your funding application to put it across to the funders. We're going to work on the lottery community funding form today because that's currently open until the 15th of July. So it's quite timely for us to do a run through on that. Okay, so how do we find out about what the purpose and priorities for this fund are? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share a screen with you from the Community Matters website, and I'm going to talk you through how to navigate that and what it is that you need to take into account when you're applying for this particular fund. Okay, so hold on. bear with me. We're nearly there. I must make sure I share the right screen though, because otherwise it could be embarrassing, couldn't it? Share. Cool. Okay, so can everyone see the Community Matters website?
Yeah.
Okay, so the website address, of course, is up the top here, communitymatters.gov.nz. And then when you go in there, so just say we're going in from the beginning, and then you're looking at funding for your organisation, and the fund you're particularly looking for is Lottery Community. So you click on that. Okay, there are some information and that tells you what the fund's about and what it's for, what the outcomes the committees are looking for, what the national priorities for the fund that are set by the Lottery Grants Board are, and what the priorities for those are. And then it comes down to the individual Lottery Community Committee priorities. Now, this is a really important aspect of the fund, because this is what, when the local committees look at your request, this is what they will take into account as their local priorities. So what you need to do is click on this, and I can't see anyone from any other area, so you'll be looking for the Canterbury Kaikoura Fund. Okay, so that fund's right up to Kaikoura, right down to the Waitaki River, across to the west coast, to the side of the coast, so Arthur's Pass, and like through all North Canterbury, South Canterbury, Mid Canterbury, Christchurch City, Kaikoura, and the Chatham Islands, which doesn't show there, but it does that as well. So this committee has these priorities, and I'm just going to talk quickly about, so you can all read what those are, but where it says lower priority, I just want to clarify that, because people get a wee bit stuck on this. What this means is that these things are considered by the committee to be a lower priority for funding, but it does not mean, if any of these things apply, that you will not be funded. It just means that they will consider it as a lower priority. Okay, but it doesn't mean that whatever you're trying to do can't be funded. So that shouldn't put you off entirely, but it's just to make you aware that things like when the money gets really tight, that the committee might drop off some of these things first. Okay, so it's not that you won't be funded. So I just want to make that really clear what that means. Okay. The other thing that's really good for you to know is the important funding dates. So for all the funds that Lottery administer, there are the funding dates for each fund are listed in that tab, and the Lottery Community Fund, which closes this round on the 15th of July, and the meeting date is on before the 30th of September. So the actual meeting date, I think it's the last week in September. And then the other thing you need to know is the financial requirements. Oh, it's hard to go back when you're not on the Lottery Community Funders. So the financial requirements. So if you're registered with Charity Services, the financial requirements are that you must provide your most recent accounts, and they must be uploaded to Charity Services in line with your requirements there. Or if you're an incorporated society, they need to be there on that website. Or sometimes if you're a member of another organisation, you might have those on your website. You just need to draw our attention to that. Okay, if you already comply with that, you don't need to upload your financials. However, if they're not there or you're a new organisation, you'll have to. And the financial requirements will talk about what you're required to do and provide in terms of your finances. So if you're ever unsure, this is where you would go to look. And then the other thing that matters, and it's to do with supporting documentation again, is budget. Every request must have a budget. What is required for each request in terms of a budget is listed here. So if it's an operational cost, we expect the organisation's budget. If it's a project budget, we expect a project budget. And then it talks about whether you're applying for single year, multi-year, project grant, or a single year. Okay, so you just need to make sure you go through those and the budget that you provide complies with those requirements. And they have got a couple of templates down here which shows you what needs to be included in those budgets. Okay. So back to our information. So coming down from the priorities is the dates, which we've looked at, and then it talks about what lottery community grants are for and what can be funded in terms of contributions to your organisation's operational expenses or multi-year and grant investments for up to 3 years. Okay, so it tells you what the types of things are that can be funded. Now, what I want to make really clear here, and this sounds a bit mean, but this is the way it is. If your funding request or the project or service you provide doesn't comply with these or meet any of these or the priorities of the fund, it's unlikely that this is the fund for you. So I just want to make that really clear. And sometimes that is just the way it is, and there may be another fund or different kind of scheme that you can use to fund whatever it is you're trying to do. Lottery Community does have a 3-year ability to apply for a 3-year grant, and that's really cool. What it does is give you surety of funding over that time. The requirements to be multi-year are listed here, so you have to be a legal entity, established for at least 2 years, have a good grant management history, have evidence of good governance and management systems, and have experience in running a similar service, activity or project for which funding is requested. Now, the funding history does not have to be with Department of Internal Affairs. It can be with another funder. So if you get funding from another source, that can be fine too, okay? And you've had it for the last 2 years. Okay, what we don't fund, and this is really critical, is individuals. So an individual is unable to apply. You must be an incorporated society, a charitable trust. You can be a company, but as long as you've got a charitable purpose, and not for profits generally. So we don't fund research. That's because there are other research grants that you can apply for in terms of lottery. We don't fund major capital works over 30,000. Okay, and that's the total project cost. So if your total project for a capital works project is over 30,000, then it's unlikely you'll get funded through this fund. We don't fund food for food banks, and that's because there's obviously assistance available through other avenues for that. We don't fund alcohol and similar substances, for example, kava. And there's also the request where the Lottery Minister's Discretionary Fund. So those things are excluded. Okay, we've talked about supporting documents. And then there's a couple of additional statements there. So if your request is for minor capital works, you will also need 2 quotes for building or renovation costs. And what you need to know is if you're applying for a contribution towards your operational costs, you can spend that, if you are granted, you can spend the grant on anything that's listed in your operational budget, except where that particular cost is specifically excluded or ineligible. Okay, so the committee can exclude particular types of costs when they look at a request. Otherwise, it's for any of the costs listed in your budget. And it's not itemised to any particular item. Okay, and in our system, if you want to apply, so you just click on the login here, okay, and you log into the grants management system, and then you click on this login here. Now, I can't click on that because this is the live system. You do have to have a RealMe username and password. That RealMe username and password belongs to you as an individual and not to your organisational group that you're working with. Okay, so you shouldn't be sharing it around, because remember, with a RealMe username and password, you can renew your passport on that, and you don't want your friends doing that on your behalf. So it's really important that you have your own individual RealMe login. If you don't have one, once you click on this, you have the ability to create one. Okay, so that's that. Now in the system, there's 3 profiles that we have. One is for you as an individual, which has your RealMe username and password linked to it. The other one is for your organisation, which you are linked to, and this enables you to make applications on behalf of the organisation and update the organisation profile. every time you make a request in our system, we ask that you update the organisation profile and make sure that your contact details and all the information in that profile is correct, including your GST details, your bank account numbers, your organisation's purpose, and all those things. So if you could please just check those every time, because that could make a difference to us if we need to contact you about anything. The other thing that was of course is the request that you're making. Okay, so there are three things: the personal profile about you, the organisational profile, which we expect you to update all the time, and the actual request that you're applying for funding for. Okay, on the organisation profile, if you're a new organisation, you must attach confirmation or verification of the bank account that you want your grant paid into. So that has to have organisation's name on it, and it has to be the name that is in the name of the group that's making the request. So you can't be applying for the I don't know, North Canterbury Bowls Association and the bank account's in the name of the North Canterbury Tennis Association. It just won't go. So that it has to be in the name of the organisation that you're applying for funding for. And so it can be a pre-printed deposit slip or a bank account verification form. The other form that you have to put there, if it's not already in charities, as I've already said, is the financial information. If you're a new organisation, please have a look on that financial information page. It will tell you what you need to do to comply with the requirements. Okay, so on your request, the only document we ask for is your bank, budget. Okay, if you're not sure, please look at the template of the one that's in the system, or give us a call. Happy to help you with that. Okay. If you're not sure about whether or not your organisation is eligible, I suggest you ring and contact us, and we'd be happy to help you with that. Okay, and now for the nitty-gritty. Hold on, I've got a wee document here. So when you're applying for funding, it's really just like telling a story, okay? So you're a storyteller. I'll just stop sharing this because you don't need to look at that anymore. Okay, so you're a storyteller, and what you're going to do is tell your story. Now, you can do this in several ways in an organisation. You can create an email campaign, you can build your organisation's social media profile, you can tell it in your weekly newsletter, or you can just tell it to your friends. It's easy as that. But every request for funding needs the same elements that you use if you're telling the story. So, of course, the first thing you need is a purpose. Why are you telling the story, and why are you telling it now? Good stories are well thought out. So before you begin your grant application, you need to be clear about what your story is, what your project is, and is it worth pursuing. You need to think about the outcomes and the impacts your project is going to have. What makes it worth funding? It needs to be well planned so that when or if you receive funding, you'll be ready to begin and complete your project successfully. It needs a plot. Good stories have structure and take the reader on a journey. Think about your grant application the same way. This is exciting, isn't it? Who'd have thought that funding and storytelling could go so well together? There are certain structural elements your application must have. So that's the updated organisation profile, the budget, the financial information, and it has to comply with the requirements. But make sure you only give the documents that are provided. If there's anything else that we want, we'll ask you for it. Don't you worry about that. So your application should take the reader on a journey from the problem that's being addressed through to the planned approach, to the positive and local and logical outcomes that you're trying to achieve. If it isn't well planned and outlined, the outcomes you're trying to achieve don't make sense. So you make sure that the steps are in place to get from the beginning to end and show the reader and the decision maker, because it's most important, those decision makers, clearly how their input is going to make all the difference in your community. Right, so we've got a purpose and a plot, but we need some people, we need some characters in this story. So the characters are those people that have an input into how this project will happen. So that's your stakeholders, your key people in your organisation, those who you collaborate with on projects. Okay, so when writing the application isn't about you as the writer, it's about the people that are involved in your story. Who's in your team that's going to commit to this? Who are you collaborating with? and most importantly, the people who are helped by this project. So who is going to benefit from your service and how? Okay, and how is your organisation capable of making this project a success? Okay, so now the fund is obviously the key character in your story as well. So you need to think about what their motivations are, about what they're interested in and what they're trying to achieve. So invite them to be part of connecting your organisation's capabilities to positive outcomes. They have a role too, and without their role, there is no story. So you just need, that's where the priorities come in. So you need to make sure that your project is aligning with those priorities, because that's what the fund is looking for. So when you're telling a story through your funding application, you need to know who your audience is, and that applying for funding is no different than sharing a story. Okay, you should only submit your application when you know what the areas of interest or the priorities are, what their funding objectives are and their capacity that's all in line with the outcomes you're seeking to achieve, and when you have a project that matches their guidelines. So if you're unsure or need clarification, you can call us. We're happy to talk to you about your project or your service or your activities and what you're trying to do. Particularly, we're interested in the outcomes that you're going to achieve in your community and what difference you're going to make. So those are the stories that we really want to hear. What the word of caution around that is, don't change your story just to meet the fund requirements, okay? What that means is that this just isn't the fund for you, and that your story might be best told to another person or funder that's going to be able to help you with what you're trying to achieve. Okay. So we're just saying it's about planning your project, believing in its potential, and find a funder who does the same. So even the best stories lose their impact if they're not delivered well. We all know that. So with all the effort you've put into planning your project and approaching the right funder, the last thing you want to do is put in a poorly written application to let you down. So I'm just going to give you a couple of hot tips so you can submit your best application. So allow yourself enough time to prepare, write and submit. Okay, so we know this fund closes on the 15th of July. Okay, don't do it on the 15th of July. Okay, that makes it really difficult for you. It puts a lot of pressure on your organisation. Finding the documents can sometimes get tricky. So please, would you write it and submit it earlier than the 15th so that you've got time to prepare it, look, make sure you've got all the documents and have a really good request in. Make sure you've answered every question and met every requirement, and attaching those documents as part of that. Have someone else proofread the application. It's hard to correct your own work, we all know that. And ask your proofreader to explain the project back to you. And if they don't understand what it is you're trying to say, then remember other people are unlikely to as well. And that could include the person that's assessing the request and the decision maker. So we just really need to make sure it's a really clear, succinct story that will work well for every reader. Okay, so that's my story today. So remember those funding requests: purpose, plot, characters, audience, and great writing. Okay, and that's the elements of a good funding application, same as a good story. Okay, now you will have received a worksheet that corresponds with the breakout room number, and the breakout room number will show on your screen somewhere randomly when it's assigned to you. So you'll be assigned to the breakout room and you will have 10 minutes in that room to introduce yourself, nominate a scribe and feedback. And the scribe needs to physically take notes because there's no electronic way of doing this, to feedback to the rest of the group. So what we're going to do is, they're the questions. What is on your sheet is the questions for the lottery request. We want you to formulate the best response. Now, each of those responses has a response, but is that enough? Is that what the fund is looking for? And that's what we'd like you to have a look and decide what should be included and what the best elements are in that request. So you'll have 10 minutes in the breakout time, introduce yourselves and nominate your scribe that's going to feed back to the group. If you need help when you're in the breakout room, just ask for help, click the help button and the host will come and help. The chat features in your breakout room is only for the breakout room and will disappear when you leave. Breakout rooms will not be recorded, but the rest of the session is. Okay, and if you finish your questions early, go ahead and attempt another question. Attempt as many questions as you can, because when we come back together, anybody that's attempted a question can feedback on it, and that's fantastic. Everyone will come back to the same main room again, and we'll work through the questions together, feedback and discussions. If there's any additional questions or comments, that can be asked through chat, and we're happy to answer those at that point. Okay, so is anybody unclear? Could they quickly pop something in chat if they need? Just unmute. You're on mute.
Kia ora. So in the chat, we're introducing ourselves, what we do, and we're asking the questions. Is that correct?
Yes. You're answering the questions. Yes.
We're answering our questions. So if someone will ask us questions, we'll answer them.
No, you've got the sheet with the questions on it. And if you haven't, someone in your chat room should have it. Okay? All right. So is everyone else clear? Right. So without further ado, we're going to head off to the chat rooms. But Ronelle, I think you wanted to say something first. If I left anything out.
Yes, thank you very much, Trish. Just quickly, I'm going to hand over to Nikki. She just wants to add something. And if anybody has anything they want to ask, go to chat quickly. And while we're preparing your breakout room, you can have a quick chat with us. Nikki?
So there's nothing of major importance on the chat at this point. Just to clarify that you're answering the question that is corresponding to your chat room.
Thanks, Nikki.
So the number on your questionnaire is the number on your chat room.
Thank you for clarifying that for us, Nikki. Sam, I'm just going to ask you to come in here quickly. Our group is smaller than what we anticipated at first. Are you going to put us into 10 groups or less, so that we have at least 3 or so participants in the chat? If you can just answer that question for me, please.
We do have the 10 questions relating to the 10 rooms, so I think that probably makes the most sense. I'll also just add that if you are in a room and you need help, there will be a button that says ask for help, which you can click on, and then a host will come and join you in that room.
Thank you so much, Sam. Okay, everybody, this is new for all of us, and we may make a mistake or two, but let's try and have fun with this. And when we go into the breakout rooms, it will make more sense to all of you, and you will be able to talk to one another. And just one thing that I forgot to say to you all in the beginning is we are recording this. When you go into your breakout room, the recording stops. But when we come back into the big room again, the recording will pick up again. So while you're out in your breakout rooms, no recording. In this room, we are recording. Yes, Nikki, there's one thing from you.
Yes, something from Yvonne Blair to Trish. Can you clarify, if your project is larger than 30,000, you can't contribute to the project, say 5,000?
That's correct. Okay, so if your total project cost is more than 30,000, this is not the fund for you. There's the Lottery Community Facilities Fund, and details about that are on the website.
Thank you, Nikki. Okay, people, when you go into your breakout rooms, just one last reminder. You have to have one person in your breakout room that takes notes. When we come back into the big room, we're going to discuss that notes as a collective. So please, you have a scribe when you go into breakout room. Identify who your scribe is, and the scribe takes notes that you will share when we're back in the big room. Sam, we can go to breakout room now. Thank you.
Okay, so you'll find the number for the breakout room. When you go into the breakout room, you'll get a number, and that's your corresponding question that you answer.
There you are. We're now back from our breakout room. Sam has just started the recording again. I'm going to hand you back to Trish now, and Trish is going to run the rest of the workshop with you guys, sharing your notes with us. Thank you. Trish, are you there?
I'm here. So I popped in to see a couple of you. It was nice seeing you and seeing what you're working on. Right, so the first question, group 1, what do you want funding for? And I think, Kathy, that may have been you and Don.
Yep, that's right. So Don was kind enough to let me write my funding request. So I'm just going to read that out to you.
Okay, so we've got the senior citizens group, and that was our scenario. So what did they want funding for?
Okay, so when I talked to you, because I asked about it, you said you could actually write what you wanted funding for.
Oh, right. Okay, so that's all right. So
yeah, but I can answer that question if you like.
Yeah, answer that question.
So it looks to me that they want a funding for, I mean, it wasn't very clear, but I would say it's operational costs. But I mean, what was in there already was very, very kind of sketchy.
Right.
But it looks to me like that, I mean, they do a number of things, for example, outings, so that's going to be transport. They have to have speakers, so maybe they need funding for gifts for the speakers or payment for the speakers. Mm-hmm. And perhaps they've got staff providing the activities, and then they've got heating and so on, and a venue. So there's a whole lot of things there that lend itself to wanting funding.
Okay, so basically a contribution towards their organisational costs, in particular, those items that you have talked about. Okay, so if it was a project, you would just put the name of the project and what the project was about. Okay, nice and simple, really. So the next question comes from group 2, which is what community need do you propose to meet? So group 2.
Can I clarify something, Patricia?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes.
Away from me. So in that particular part, was what they put enough?
Was what they put enough?
Yeah, because there's no. So what I unpacked would have been better. Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
So it's a contribution towards the operational costs, including and what actually they are, so that they can run their programs and activities. So that's your nuts and bolts. It's your items. It's what you're wanting the funding for.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So the next question, group 2. Who was group 2? What community need do you propose to meet?
So I'm Ria Duffy from the HGC and the community team. Hello everyone. So we was in a group with Stu, who is in the Haranui Trails, and also Amy, that's a manager of football club. So we discussed that bringing people together in the older community for sharing information, friendship and fun is the core reason why. This is to cover the vulnerable people in that community through social connectiveness and well-being.
Model answer. Excellent. Okay, so that's what the community need you propose to meet is. Okay, so it's what your service is actually going to do for those people in the community. Okay, so the next question is, how will you address the need? So group 3. Nobody did that question?
So Yvonne and I, there you go.
Okay, cool. Yvonne.
Oh, I didn't actually write it down, so I'll just have to reflect. Thanks. But we talked about how you decided the need and what activities you'd provide and how those activities meets the need. So being more specific about those activities meeting the needs, and we talked about it going back to your strategic plan. Nikki might want to add on to that.
Yeah, so we talked about aligning that with your strategic plan and goals for the year. It could look like a calendar of events, and it also could include input and feedback from your group itself about how they want to spend their time.
Yeah, cool.
That's
okay.
where we got to.
So that sounds really good. I've got nothing to add to that. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to add to that or ask questions about? Okay. All right, so now we're going to move on to the outcome section of the request. So when you're looking at outcomes, this is what the committee funds for. Okay, so they're funding for outcomes. So it's really important we know what those outcomes are. So this section is quite critical in determining the funding. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. What are the expected benefits or outcomes? So group 4, who's our spokesperson there?
Yes, I took the notes.
Hi.
The outcome, the major outcome was that these people were going to have a good time, but we appreciated that the funders would probably want to know what a good time was.
Yes.
We thought it would be good if you could have good hard data, but that would be relatively difficult to get in those things other than numbers of people participating, although you could extrapolate it out to reduced community health costs, reduced costs of care of these people later in life, because in their outings they have enjoyed good social interaction, they've shared ideas about food and exercise and health, and generally they're feeling more pleased with life. And we also acknowledge the fact that there is a group of people who are socially isolated. We have no ideas as to how you would find those people and include them in such activities.
Right. So thank you. Has anybody got anything they would like to add to that? Okay, so when we're looking at the expected benefits and outcomes, it is what is the benefits or change of what you're trying to do going to show. So in this case, it could be improved well-being for people living in older people living in the community because you're providing connectedness and friendship for those people. It could be around keeping them informed so that they're able to live safely in the community. It could be about you're providing classes for people on safety, preventing falls, how to cook for one. So all those things that allow people to remain in their homes and remain connected, all those kinds of things are the outcomes that you're looking at. So you're wanting people to have connections and friendships that enable them to live in the community safely and well. Those kinds of things. So that's what you're trying to achieve through your outcomes. What are the outcomes of this project or service that you're trying to deliver?
Can I ask a question, Patricia?
Yes, you can.
I was interested in that comment about data. Is data an important part of, say, what you want to see in outcomes?
Okay, data contributes to the outcomes, and actually we're going to talk about data a little bit further down. Data may not be the best fit in this section. However, it's not a bad thing to put it there. But what I would say to you is if you include anything in one section, it's not required in any other section, so don't repeat yourself. Okay, does that answer that, Kathy? Okay, cool. Okay, so the next question, is everyone clear on outcomes? Okay. So your inputs are like the money and the resources you need to do your project. The outputs are your numbers, and the outcomes are what it is you're trying to achieve through your project, okay? And how is the community going to benefit from what you're trying to do? Okay, so the next question, we're up to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do you know this is needed? So group 5, who's our spokesperson?
So myself and Denise were question 5. We did think that this was where some of the data would be needed. So we're like basing it on an event or a project that you would want. You'd want to be able to provide the stats of the numbers of people this would be benefiting. You'd put in maybe stats of health benefits that this would contribute to, the stats of benefits of socialization for older people, and also include research, like feedback from maybe some of your some of the older citizens as to maybe previous events that you've done and why it's benefited them, how it's helped them, and what they maybe want to kind of collaborate with what you have put down that you want to do as well. So yeah, a bit of the stats and the facts in this section.
Cool. Okay. So that's really awesome. Has anybody got anything else they'd like to add to that, or any questions about that?
Could you point to the fact that something doesn't exist already as evidence of its need?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
The fact if there aren't any specific senior-specific events or in other cases.
Yep. This is the only centre in this community that provides this service, definitely. Yep. You could also talk about how many people, older people, live in your community, and the percentage of people still remaining in their homes and things like that. So all those sorts of things can form a picture around that. So this is your picture. So how will you achieve it? So number 6.
So that was myself and Jackie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. We came up with a few things. It's a bit different to what I'm used to thinking about because I'm just here from the local pony club. So
yeah.
We thought you'd have to firstly organise transport, because transporting old people around, they probably don't have their own transport, so you're going to have to organise pick up, drop off, getting everyone to a central location. Probably going to have a 3 to 6 month plan of what these activities are to organise speakers or going places, and then organising somewhere like a hall or a church if you're having someone coming to you.
Yeah.
And then with that may come with having to have your own supplies like chairs, cups, plates if you're going to provide cups of tea, food, etc. Also probably needing a weekly phone call just to check that people were going to come, and also to sort of do a welfare check, just keeping in touch with them, just making sure that everything's okay, because you might be one of the only people that are sort of communicating with them. And then I also thought about it from my day job perspective, which is working for the police, that taking old people out comes with a whole lot of risks. They've got health issues, maybe dementia, so you're going to have to work out what they are, that no one's going to wander off, and also that making sure that the volunteers like drivers and all that have the right qualifications. You're going to have to do checks on them, make sure they've got licenses, and yeah, that's about all we came up with.
So that's all you're planning really, isn't it, for your activities and programs?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to have those planned, and so you're going to achieve your projects by having your planning in place. Now, what was the rather short answer of that question? Because none of those short answers are enough or answer the question in enough detail. There's a balance between the amount of detail that you need. So instead of maybe cups and saucers, it's about having the resources needed to run this project, managing the risks associated with the transportation of older people. Yep. Those kinds of things. So it's actually, the devil isn't so much in the detail, it's in just that higher level statement, but providing enough information that shows that you've got a well-planned project.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so where are we up to? Yes, question 7. So everyone's clear on number 6. Number 7 is how will you show you've achieved it?
That was us. And so we were talking about the number of people who actually attend once you hold the events, or have the group. If you are doing something a bit more involved, you could point to the number of sponsors or co-funding that you get potentially. You can talk about community feedback, so you could potentially create a survey or put a notice in the local paper letting people know that they can get back to you with feedback about what they do and don't like, etc. And Nikki suggested you can get the word out on what you've done, so just actually letting everyone know what you've achieved, and do Facebook posts and put things out in a school newsletter or whatever your local equivalent is of news.
Okay, yeah, so it's getting those stories out. You can also show your story on Facebook or on your website. That's always a cool way of showing how you've achieved it, that you've got people actually going on your trips, that you've got people attending your speaker events or your coffee mornings or whatever other those projects and services that are included in your request. So it's all the things that actually tell us. So it's your data, if you like. So just a point here that it's really important that you do keep data on the service that you're providing and keep those stories so that if asked, you can show how you've achieved it. And a really good place for sharing stories, of course, is on, you know, in social media. So I strongly encourage you, if you haven't already, to get yourself on a social media website so that you can promote your services and activities, and we can all see those people having a good time doing what they're doing. So that's a good way of sharing those great stories for these community activities that's happening out there. Okay, so surveys are also a great way of finding out how people are. And the great thing about surveys is often you get information about the learning opportunities and what you can do to improve your service. So that's a really good thing to do as well. Okay, now, number 8, how do you know the community supports your project? Okay, and what consultation is taking place and how is it supported by local hapu and iwi? Okay, who had question 8?
Yeah, we had question 8 there. So trying to look at how you can measure community support for a project would obviously depend on the stages of your development and who your community are. So in our group, for instance, we had ourselves, who are a fledgling arts collective just getting started. We had Men's Shed and Pegasus, who are at a new stage of development, and Cheviot Promotions, who've been through a year of funded promotion and are now looking at their second year. And the different measures of support for those were, for instance, ourselves, we've got a lot of our engagement with our community has been online through our Facebook and Instagram as we kind of build our community, and we've had a lot of feedback from that. So you can see that in the number of followers that are growing each day, and the comments that we get. For the Men's Shed, for instance, their kind of metric for community engagement is the support from primary schools and the kind of the customers that are coming through the shed, but also the number of men that are joining the Men's Shed. And for the Cheviot Promotions, it's the number of jobs that have been retained because of the community support that have come to what was called the biggest cul-de-sac in the world. Yeah, the end of the biggest cul-de-sac in the world. It was quite So when you're kind of looking at community support, that can look like lots of different things for different groups, and how that is recorded, like some of the previously answered questions, that might be in how many followers and comments you've got in your Instagram, or how many members are part of your group, or like for instance for us now, because we're in the early stage of our development, it's been about how much online engagement we've had. We've got an upcoming exhibition, and it'll be really interesting to see for us what the organic reaction of people walking past on the footpath, and what support we'll get from that kind of stage of our development. So yeah, how do you know the community supports your project? It's things like that. And in terms of us for consultation, we've got a couple of projects, for instance, a mural where we've been reaching out to local iwi for advice on that, and that's been very receptive. It's been a really great dialogue, and all that. We're looking at making sure we record for those reasons so that we can demonstrate that support is there. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, model answer. So also in this case, you might be working, you know, providing support for members from age concern, the residential rest homes in your area, the local iwi, local marae if there's one, and local service groups. So that could be Lions, community boards, district councils. Okay, you also know the community supporting your projects, and that goes back to, without repeating it all again, but the number of people attending and all those things. So those things come into that. You're not expected to go back over that again. You've already said it. Yeah. Okay. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to add to that one? No?
Is it okay, Trish, in those applications to say something like we would use the same metrics as in the, you know, question 8 or question 7?
Yeah. Yeah. It is okay to refer back. Okay. Yeah, because the worst thing you can do is repeat yourself, because, no, I'll sum it up at the end, but yeah. So that, yes, it is okay to refer back, because repetition is just boring. And remember, when these requests go to the committee, they are reading For this committee, it could be up to 150. So it's you know, less is not, more is not necessarily better. Succinct, concise, and relevant is what they're after. It's a good story. It's to the point. It's on track. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Trish, I just want to interrupt you very rudely there. Jean Barr, can you just mute for us, please? Jean, can you just mute for us, please?
Thanks, Jane. Okay, so question 8. What community participation or collaboration will be involved? Okay, so that's leading on from the previous question. Who are you coordinating with or collaborating with or participating with to run the service? So who's our person on question 9?
So that would be me, myself and Carly. So Carly's asked me to speak on behalf of us. So where we looked at over here, so the people that we would collaborate with are aged concerns, other retirement villages, schools, ambulance, fire, Lions, Rotary, your local library, councils, church, your local countdown or whatever. I live semi-rurally, so we have a huge community here that's very involved, and everybody participates and is very happy to participate. Some people more than others, but that's all right. Then we look at some of the schools, and we look at our drivers for the aged care and our drivers for our local, excuse me, our local postie, and they help with all the transporting, you know, for these various functions. So we're very community-based because we're semi-rural, but I know that having worked in other areas, it's a similar thing, but maybe a little bit more, not so focused like we are here because we're fairly rural. So our local hairdressers, our local doctors, laboratories, gyms, and all those people also help collaborate with these to offer the services that are needed. And it works pretty well.
Cool. Okay, so there's a number of partners you could be collaborating with or participating with to deliver your service. Okay, and Jean's given us a very extensive list of who those potentially people could be in the case of this project. Okay, so thank you for that. I really don't have anything to add, but all that I would say is there is a variety of people that you can collaborate and work with. So there's a difference between being involved with, supporting, collaborating. So the collaboration we're looking for sometimes is that there are other partners involved in your project to help with the delivery of it. And basically that's how that works. Or your project is participating with other agencies and organisations, and it's not just standing alone doing its thing in isolation from the rest of the community. That's not really always a healthy sign. So we like to see that there are other participants or collaborators involved in your project and that you're using others' services and things like that to deliver what you're trying to do. Okay, and the last one, oh no, sorry, has anyone got anything they'd like to add to that? No, not today. Okay, so the last one is, how does your request align with the purpose or priorities of this fund? Who's question 10?
I think, Sharon, would you be okay to speak for this? Because I think you were actually taking the best notes from what I could see.
Okay, sure. Just a second, I'll start my video. There we go. Okay. So I thought it was a clever suggestion that to answer this question concisely is to actually use some of the exact wording that is in the question. So, or the purpose, and the way that that this request aligns with the purpose priorities of this fund is that it enhances the life of older people by providing fun activities and a healthy lunch. And overall, it improves well-being, connects participants to their community, improves the health of participants, provides a nutritious lunch, protects the vulnerable,
and provides activities in a safe environment. So these are all ways that this program enhances the life of older people.
Okay, so if we go back to the website at the beginning, when I originally showed you the project, so information about the fund, sorry, there were the priorities for the fund, and I won't read it all out to you. You don't have to align with all the priorities all the time, okay? So there's no requirement to align with all the priorities. What you have to do is select the priorities for the fund that you do align with, and make sure that you connect what you're doing and the outcomes you're achieving to the purpose or priorities of the fund. So the purpose of the fund and the priorities for the fund are listed on that page in the Community Matters website for Lottery Community. So in this case, there are 3 priorities. Vulnerable and disadvantaged people have a higher quality of life. We could say that older persons are more vulnerable in the community, and the projects that you're generating have a higher quality, provide these people with a higher quality of life because, and then you would answer that, because the services you're provided brings them together, provides opportunity for connection and participation and socialisation. The wellbeing and social connectedness within communities is enhanced. So you're running projects across the community and bringing these people together. So it's improving their wellbeing and social connectedness. It's a direct alignment. Projects and services outlined in this request demonstrate alignment with this because. And you really have to answer it in that way because this is a question that is very important to the committee. Okay, so you have to identify which of these projects and which of these priorities your project aligns with. If it doesn't align with them, then remember this may not be the fund for you if that's the case. And lower priorities, remember I said about that before, doesn't preclude you from applying. It doesn't mean that you won't get funded. It just means if the funding gets really tight and the committee have to make some tough decisions, is that your group may not get funding, or they might look at it and think that actually this is a great project. We notice that you actually don't get government funding for this particular project, so we're happy to put that in the pool. So yeah, and that's, you know, unfortunately how that works. Okay, so there does have to be one of the fund priorities is that your project, activity, service or program that your organisation is running demonstrates community benefit. So that's the first thing that you have to really be thinking about when you're doing all this, is that does this request show community benefit? Of a public nature is the words that are in the Gambling Act, of course. So that's why it's really important that you can demonstrate that in your request. So that's probably when I get to the end of my story, I'm going to ask myself when I'm reading your story is, does this show community benefit of a public nature? Okay, because at the end of the day, that's our legal requirement and that's what's in the Gambling Act. That's the governing act that sits on top of lottery. You'll all know where the lottery money comes from. It is proceeds from lotto. What you may not know is that 20 cents in every dollar that you spend on your lotto ticket comes back to the community in the form of grant funding. Okay, so you know when you're buying that lotto ticket, don't feel too guilty because you know that you are contributing to the community. So that's where the money comes from. Some groups choose not to apply for lottery funding for that reason. Their values of the organisation don't align with gambling, and so they don't see that they fit with that, and that's okay. Okay, so there's no reason for that. You'll just need to find the fund that works with your organisation best. And we do get a bit of that, and that's okay. And sometimes we provide other services to groups, but they don't apply for our funding through this fund because they don't feel that they can because their values don't align. All right, and that's okay. All right, so do we think the funding application told us a story? When we went through the answers, did we get a story? So do we have a purpose, a plot, some characters, an audience, and some great writing? What do we think? Yeah? Okay. Hi, Nikki. We did? Okay. Thumbs up if you think we had a good story. Because you all contributed to part of the story. You all wrote a chapter each, which was really great. And I'm really happy that that you've all contributed and stayed on, so it can't have been too bad. All right, so I think I better look at the running sheet because I think I hand back to you now, Ronelle, and you're going to do the finishing touches. Or maybe I should ask if there's any questions, can you pop them into chat now? And we'll come back to you.
Trish, there are some questions.
Yes.
So from Joanne Stevenson, is there a place where operational and organisational costs are defined on the website?
Okay, so if you have a look in the budget section, so on the website, hold on, oh no, I won't share that page. I can just quickly put the website up. So if there's questions about the website, where'd it go? Hold on. So on the page that talks about the budget, it does clarify what budgets are for organisations. And in the template, it shows you how you can fill that out. Hold on, I'll just bring this around here. Where's my people gone? Here. Yes, so it's on that budget page. Share screen. Share. So if you have a look at your funders, and it says budgets, okay? So the information about what needs to be included on a budget, if it's an operating budget for your organisation, what that means, and if it's a project budget, what that means, and in terms of how that works with a multi-year grant is clarified, okay? And there are some templates at the bottom for you to use if you need to. Okay,
that's great. The second question from Stu was around when linking your organisational profile. When linking your organisational profile to your Real Me login, what is the organisational ID? In brackets, okay. We are a charitable trust.
Okay, so when you log in through Real Me, if you've already got an organisational profile created and you're connected to it, it will come up on your menu. If you need to be connected to one, or you're having difficulty with that, I really think it's a good idea if you contact me and I'll help you through it. It's quite technical and really this isn't the forum for that. So I'm happy to work individually with people and access to the system because it's quite dependent on variables. Yeah.
Cool. Is it possible to apply for 2 different things under 2 different categories in 1 year?
Okay, so lottery funding is an annual fund and it's generally restricted to 1 application in any calendar year. It runs 2 funding rounds. So if you're a round 1 applicant, we would consider that you continue with your round 1 applications, or if you're a round 2 applicant, that you come in annually on the round 2. If you miss a round in your annual cycle, then it is possible to change rounds and that's cool. What we would suggest is that you apply for your grant once a year. If you've got 2 projects, you include them in the same request.
Good.
And just itemise them under 1 and 2. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Trish. And the last question on the chat is, as a startup, fledgling, new organisation, not-for-profit, are there grants available to help with establishing costs, or do you need to be operating first to get these grants? We are trying to find financial support to essentially get us off the ground and running.
So yeah, so if you're a new group, we like to talk to you first and work with you about where you're going and your strategy going forward and how to access the funding. And as if, we like to have a conversation with new groups first, please. So if you contact, happy to work with you. Yeah.
That's great. And that's all the questions on the chat.
Cool.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Trish. If there's any other question, Trish, can I just ask you to close your screen so we can go back to the big screen again? Thank you. There we go. If there's any other questions as we're wrapping up this, please just put them in chat and we can address it, because if we still have a minute or so at the end of this, I'm going to do the poll now. Now, if this works correctly, Sam had given all of us a walk through the poll, and if we get this right, it will work fantastically. If we don't get it right, you can just type your answer in chat. But otherwise, if you go to the poll at the bottom of your screen,
Ronelle, I will just interrupt. Sorry.
Okay. Yes.
So you shouldn't need to do anything. I'm gonna activate the poll now,
okay.
And it should just pop up, and then you can go through the 3 questions. You shouldn't need to. Everyone else shouldn't need to press anything.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. So we wait for Sam to pop up the poll for us, and we'll just talk about it. There we go. Question number 1. How helpful was this forum for your organization? 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. If you can rate it now for us, please. Does that work for everybody?
No, it's not working for me. Oh, yes, it was just a bit slow, sorry.
Okay, so you just click on the number that you rate it at. I'll go over. It's a timer at the top. We'll wait for the timer to run out. Okay, Sam, are we going to the next question now?
It should have all all 3 questions should be up at the moment, actually. So that should just be working. People can click through them.
We can just scroll. There we go. Lesson for me to learn as well. Just scroll to question number 2 and then scroll down to question 3. What suggestions do you have for future workshop? There we go. And when you're done, just end polling.
Oh, sorry, Ronelle, you may have just closed that on some people. I'll
Oh
relaunch
my
it.
goodness. Sorry, can you reinstate them? Relaunch polling. There, I think I can do it. There we go.
I think that might, okay, that may have just erased some people's polls, but if everyone could just give that another go, that would be much appreciated.
I'm terribly sorry about that.
But still learning, still learning.
Still learning. I hope we're not running out of time for this.
Ronelle, this is the time you could tell us a joke.
Oh, no, you don't want me to tell you any jokes. I'll leave this to Sam to control now, because I may just lose all our information again. Sam, so when you're ready, you can just let us come out, please.
Well, we're just waiting on a couple more people to finish that poll, and but we could continue.
Can I ask my quick question, which is there a right time and way to contact you guys? Because we're also a startup.
There we go. Trish, can you answer Kathy's question for her, please? You're on mute.
The poll was in front of me. I couldn't see me. Okay, so my contact phone number is 027 557 1046.
Thank you for that, Trish. I was just going to ask Trish to put her website detail in chat again, because if anybody has any other questions that pops up for you later, you can just go to the DIA's website and find the answers on that page. And if you have further questions, you can either contact Trish directly or Wendy Howe or Nikki, and they will put you in contact with the right people to answer your questions. Okay, Sam, how are we doing on the polling?
All done.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Is there a way that, okay, wait, I will minimize this because I can't see anybody because I have this big screen over my screen. Terribly sorry about that. Thank you very much for everybody that has participated in today's workshop. Thank you so much for participating in our poll as well. We will evaluate that once we go through the recording, and hopefully we will bring you another workshop. Has everybody enjoyed this? And let me ask you to move your mouse on your screen again, and if you look at the bottom, there's one that says reactions, and if you can all give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, fantastic. Thank you so much. I think this brings us to the end of today's workshop. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for Nikki, Wendy, and Trish. You have provided us with a fantastic set of new information here, and I'm for one is definitely going to attempt one of these applications. Thank you for that, Trish. We just going to hand over to Nikki now to do as a final karakia, and after that I will conclude this meeting. Thank you so much. Nikki.
Kia ora koutou. So kia tau te rangimarie, e roto e tene mahe, o tatou e tene wā. Ka kite.
Thank you, Nikki. Bye-bye, everybody.